Hey, what's up people of YouTube? This is Grow Me Something Mister, and today's video is going to be about a cheesy bread. Let's go over the things that we have that we're going to need. First off, I'm going to have a cutter. This is a bench scraper. It's plastic. I like that to cut out the dough. You'll see that later on. A measuring spoon. I use a teaspoon. My snowman spatula, a little paper towel. In this bowl, I already have a teaspoon of yeast and a rounded teaspoon of sugar. So I'm just going to mix that up and let that proof. I also have salt. I have gold medal bread flour and all-purpose flour. So I'm going to use probably about 50-50 of the bread flour. It gives it a different texture. When I'm kneading and mixing, as I need additional flour, I will be using the all-purpose flour. I have two different types of cheeses, a Mexican 4 cheese and an Italian 5 cheese. I also have olive oil. I'll be putting about 2 teaspoons of olive oil for that. So we'll let this proof in a warm spot for about 5 to 7 minutes, and we'll come right back. And we're back. The water, the yeast, and the sugar has frothed up nicely. You can smell it. So you know everything is working. So now it's time to add on, while it's all liquid, it's time to add on the olive oil. 2 teaspoons, a tablespoon. If you add a lot, the structure of it becomes a lot looser, so I want to kind of keep it a little bit tighter. So instead of adding a tablespoon, I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of olive oil. Obviously, I'm not going to mix it up. The salt, I don't add in yet right on top of the yeast. People say you can add it right on top. I just don't do it because I don't want the salt to just get all mangled with that. So we're going to add our bread flour first, and like I said, it's about 50-50. And if you saw my other videos, I don't really measure a whole lot because I know how it's going to turn out. So we'll add some of that bread flour. We'll add in some all-purpose flour. And this is just to form the batter, the dough. Not the final product. It's not going to come together all in one shot. Remember, I added more water, 1.25 cups, so it's going to be a little bit different. Alright, so now that we have all of our flour in, let's go ahead and add in the teaspoon of salt. Normally I would add perhaps a teaspoon and a half of salt, but we're going to have cheese, so that's going to add salt to it as well. So let's get a close-up of my mixing of this and some kneading. Alright, so after giving this a mix, just to get all the ingredients combined, it looks like I have maybe just enough flour actually. It's not that wet. Normally it looks like a wet oatmeal, but this is actually pretty well. I might have forgotten to mention to please wash your hands before you start this. Doesn't matter if you're using a stand mixer, doesn't matter if you're using whatever, just always good practice to wash your hands beforehand. My tabletop was washed as well, so it's all good to go. Let's see what we've got here. And of course you need, as long as you need to knead it. So I can't say you need for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or how often I need. Each person uses their hands a little differently, so it's going to be a little bit different every time. The humidity in the air, where you live, all that plays a part into how often, how long you have to knead, how much flour you need to go with the whole recipe. This is basically going to be just a straight plain dough for right now until later on when we actually add in what we need to add in. So I'm going to get this kneaded up. No need to watch me do this for several minutes. We'll get this kneaded and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I actually had just enough flour. I didn't add anything extra. It's tacky to the hand, but it's not sticking to my countertop. I would guess that's probably at least 4.5 cups of flour, perhaps, probably 4 cups. I don't really measure it because, like I said, it's going to be different. Where you live, it's going to be different where I live from day to day. So it's looking pretty good. Not quite like a sweet bread, so obviously it's not. I don't have any extra sugars and whatnot, but it's looking pretty good. It's doing what I want it to. The thing what you want to do is make a ball, so you just kind of cup your hands and roll it along the tabletop. And what that does is it stretches the top of the dough like I said, like a drum. And that tightness, as it does that, is able to trap the air bubbles so that it forces it to rise. If you had it loose, the air bubbles would just escape and your dough won't rise as much. So I'm just getting it tight, and you can see at the bottom there what it does. Makes a nice little thing at the bottom, so you just mix it up. I take the top of it here, I plop it in the bowl, get it rounded out, turn it around, and plop it. There it is. So we'll put that in a plastic bag. You can use a tea towel, some sort of other towel, paper towel, plastic wrap, doesn't matter what. You take that, cover it, put that in a warm spot for about an hour. So we'll do that, and we'll be back with the next step. Okay, so an hour has passed, and this is our dough. If you recall what it looks like and what it looks like now, it smells really good. So I could put some flour down if I wanted to avoid sticking. It might be a little tacky. I think I'll put a little bit of flour down. And what I'm going to do is, instead of rolling this out, I'm just going to kind of pat it out. You could take a rolling pin and roll it out if you want to, sort of like you're going to make a pizza or something like that. I'm just not going to bother with it. I don't want to knock out all the air bubbles, but we will be filling it up with cheese. This is the cheese mix here. You add as much cheese as you want. I'm going to make a cheesy bread, and you'll see what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill out each pocket with cheese, and then in between that I'm going to roll it in here as well. So let's take this nice looking dough, give it a magic tap. It's not really magic, it's just, that's what it is. This dough, so nice. Nice and light, so treat it right. Wow, this dough, you can see the air bubbles. I don't know if you can see that on a camera, if that's possible. The dough is really nice, as expected. So you're gonna have some air bubbles pop out. That's perfectly fine. It's what happens. You can roll this out if you wanted to. Like I said, as thick or thin as you wanted to. You can press it out as thin as you want as well. I could easily make this a pizza if I wanted to, but I'm not going to bother with the red sauce, bother with the meat or anything like that. This dough is really nice for pizza. Just look at it, you just take some sauce and you got a pizza in your hand. So it doesn't have to be round, it could be square, it doesn't matter what shape, because this is going to be like my monkey bread, but I guess I could call this a cheesy monkey bread. So take some square chunks, doesn't matter what shape, doesn't really matter what size, because you're just going to be chomping it down. So I guess you can go make a grid pattern, something like this, doesn't really matter. You get the little youngins involved, have a little fun time with it. Any shape you want, doesn't really matter. So what we'll do is just fill in each batch with cheese. Again, I use 2 different types of cheese. Don't worry about if the cheese is sticking out. It doesn't really matter, because we're going to be spreading it around anyway. I'll take these globules right here. I'm just going to see if I can coat them in the cheese. Kind of why I didn't want to put flour down, because I want the, let's see if you can see that, I want the cheese to stick, and I'm putting it into this bundt pan. Just like that, cheese falls out, doesn't really matter. We're not worrying about all that. I did line the pan with olive oil. Just roll it around, use my fingers. If you have a brush, you can do that as well. I didn't really worry about it. So just pack it on there. You're going to have cheese inside, cheese on the outside. The cheese is going to melt in between. Some of it's going to, when it gets to the pan, it's going to sort of caramelize on the pan. So that's probably the best part, the little crispiness. You don't want to burn it, but getting it crisp It'll be nice. It'll taste nice as well. I thought about putting marinara sauce in between it, each layer, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to take a chance with it. So we'll just keep doing this one at a time, packing it down, packing on the inside, and we'll come back when it's ready to go. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to do, I don't really have to, but it's kind of like putting cheese on top of baked macaroni. I'm just going to put more shredded cheese. And this was 2 8-ounce packages of cheese. You can use as much or little cheese, like I said, as you want. I'm just going to use all of this. So this cheese, this concoction here will go into, I'm going to put it into the oven, uncooked, just to warm up. You can put it in any other spot that you want, warm space. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to let that go probably for about 40 minutes or so. Normally with my other breads I go for a half hour, but because there's cheese involved and it's sort of heavy, I don't want to take the chance of it being too dense. So I'm going to put this in the plastic bag again, and I'm going to say goodbye to it for about 45 minutes. And at that time, at 45 minutes, I'm going to turn the oven on to 375, something like that, and we're going to let that come to temperature, throw this in the oven until it's ready. Okay, so it beat. Wow, look at it. Woo-hoo. Take a look at this. Cheese. Look at that. Now, like I make my monkey bread and everything else, I like to let it cool just for a moment inside the pan. Not too long that when it cools down it starts to stick. I need to test out the... Sounds good. Smells really good. Normally I take a piece of it and I like to bite into it, but yeah, it's going to let it cool down for a moment. So this was in the oven for about, I think I put it for 26 minutes on the timer, and it might have gone about 28 minutes, something like that, at 375, I believe it was. At 375 external temperature, according to the oven. Inside the oven, it showed that being at about 355. Then I reduced it down a little bit because I didn't want the outside to burn, but I wanted the inside to cook. So, alright, let's take it out and see what it looks like. The big reveal. I always like to hit it a few times just to loosen it up. I decided to use a bundt pan just to make it easy, just for something a bit different. You don't have to use this. You can use whatever kind of pan you want. I just like it this way. It makes it interesting. Looks like it's still a little warm, still wanting to stick. Let's see if we can get this out a little bit. Alright, let's try. Alright, finally out. The pan is clean, so I don't know why it took some sticking. So we can get a good view of that for you. Smells really good. Cut a piece out, see what it tastes like. Should probably use a bread knife. It's really hot. I don't like cutting bread really hot right now. I like to let it cool down. See if I can show that to you. Cheese in between. If the oil's in the cheese, it's going to be a little wet, which is why I dropped the temperature down. You just taste it real quick. Tastes good. There's cheesiness in between it. See if I can show it to you. Try to show it to you with this piece here. You can see what it looks like. Take a look at that. You can see the cheesiness in between. This is the bottom, top, depending on how you look at it. So that's it. I'm going to eat this and bring some to work. So thanks very much for watching. This is Grow Me Something Mr. with cheesy bread. And remember, well, I don't have an exit line, so see you later, everybody.